Yeah. 158 Elwood, Peter Zaragoza, and forgive my ignorance of the process of this. So I reached out to Kevin Delaney about revenue that you were getting from that state program regarding alcohol nipper bundles. And according to the results, we have about approximately 9,100 coming in over a 6-month period. I guess you could extrapolate and say it's 18,000 a year, depending on how much our townspeople drink, I suppose. But that said, I know that there's stipulations around the usage of the money. It's supposed to be used for environmental uses, conservation efforts, the reduction of solid waste and matter, and so on and so forth. One, I didn't know if this commission was, or this board was aware of that new revenue stream. Secondly, I would just hope and advocate that perhaps not the entirety of that sum, but a good portion of that sum could go towards funding some initiatives in the Conservation Commission. Some of them very simple, not that costly, but some primarily being signage issues for public access to trails, and secondarily just potential uses for the community garden and reduction of solid waste through some type of prototype of a composting program and something to that degree. I just am here to just advocate that some of that money be siphoned directly to some of those intentions that the Conservation Commission would like to use it for. So I don't think it's a very expensive expenditure to fund those types of things. And I think we have a new revenue source, and I think it's good for the greater good of the public. And of course, that money could also be put into the open land acquisition formula. That's all I have to say.
Okay, just for the record, explain to us what that is.
Sure. Back in fiscal year 21 or budget year 21, the legislature passed a public act which assesses 5 cents per nip, small alcohol nips, and it's assessed against wholesalers. So as based on the volume of nips, the wholesalers sell to retailers in each town. That town is then remitted the money. It's remitted every 6 months by public act. That money had to be remitted by April 26, I think it was. That's the first 6-month period. So that's the first time we received the money. We did receive it, and we deposited it into, we created a little account called Public Act 9123 NIPS Environmental Fund. There are very specific provisions, you're absolutely right, in the statutes where that can be spent. It is intended for, one of the areas is to prevent these nips from entering water stream. So putting things like screens over catch basins or under catch basins to prevent the nips from getting into the water stream. Brushes and other vacuums and other things to pick these items up, but it's very specific concessions where what the money can be used. So that's why we put it into that separate account. So for right now, it's sitting there, nothing's been done with it until we can identify some potential uses of the money. And then because it's the first time, we intend to reach out to town attorney just to make sure that what we intend, or some of the areas we propose to use it in live. And again, leave it in that account and spend out of that account. So if the state comes back, we don't have to report back to them, but like all other sources, the state has the right to come in and audit us. It'll be a whole lot easier to be able to comply with that request, show them what we spend, if we spend it out of that fund. So that's why we've intended to do that. I think those are all good ideas. Before we expend anything, we'll have to certainly consult the attorney to ensure that we're in time with that law. It was $9,900. So we are $20,000 a year, assuming the second half will be 6 months is the same.
What fund did you say was in?
We put it into capital non-recurring and set up a separate account specifically for the Gross Environmental Fee, so that the money is appropriated to that account, and will expend from that account.
So who's the right person for Peter to talk to with suggestions? Because it's not us.
No, I would say, I know the Conservation Commission, I believe, works with Maureen, and I would probably bring it up there. And then she and I could certainly talk. Mike Ahern, who's our Public Works Director, we have spoken because of the brushes, the brooms, the other things, the nips, that's a highway type function. And I think we probably all have to get together collectively and figure out what do we as staff think are the best uses of this to propose, and then make sure that they work, and then come back and figure out from the council or finance how we appropriate this money and spend it. And there's no limit. We put it into the capital non-recurring large measure so that it wouldn't lapse. So we didn't want to put it in the general fund and let it lapse. Then it gets lost in the general fund balance, and because it has very specific statutory requirements, we can't just let it get lost in fund balance.
I have a motion to approve our April meetings minutes. Oh, roll call. Sorry. Roll call.
Chairman Gordon.
Here.
Mr. Hernandez.
Here.
Mr. Grady. Mr. Holmes.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Here.
Mr. Paradise.
Had my mic off.
All right, can I have a motion now to approve the April 19th and April 28th meeting minutes?
And make a motion to approve of the April 19th, 2022 regular meeting, the 2022 special minutes.
Second.
Second.
Discussion, changes, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All approved. Everyone make a motion on that one?
Move to adopt and work appropriating $2,800,000 for water line replacement for the Berlin Turnpike and authorizing the issue of $2,800,000 bonds of the town to meet said appropriation, and pending the issuance thereof, and making the temporary borrowing for such purpose.
So a second
Second.
discussion? So we're bonding to White Road.
Any other questions?
This is an enterprise fund, so we need to do a specific separate fee to just Berlin water control customers to replace a section of pipe on Berlin Turnpike in front of. You may be familiar with Mr. Gadio's development, he's putting in on the Berlin Turnpike. It's out in front there. It is an old style concrete pipe that we replaced with ductile piping, better material. The bids actually came in much lower than expected. And so right now, we have about $2 million range. And then I would come back to you and the access.
So there was some talk about state funding, is that probability?
There's always the possibility of trying to get grants. It was not included in this past budget. So I think for this particular project, it's lower probability. We pursue state grants through the every time. We don't often we.
Since the project will be submitted to the Department of Public Health and or the State of Connecticut Department of Environmental Protection for funding to the State of Connecticut Clean Water Fund Loan Program. It's here in blah, blah, blah. Section 2,
And we pursue grants each time.
I just wondered if there was a probability that was going to happen or we just pursue them.
We pursue them every time. I think it's low on this one. There is another project that we're funding out of reserve balance, the Devon Grove pump station being replaced. That one, I think, is a much higher probability. That one was included in the budget last year as part of general DEEM funding. This one is not.
So even if we don't get grants, we've got to get in line for the 2% loans also.
No, this one, we're still going through the approval process, but we've been assured by folks at the Department of Public Health that this qualifies. And there's just a lot of red tape to go through.
Well, that rate's probably pretty good at this point.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Move to transfer $190,437 as detailed on the accompanying spreadsheet to cover higher than budgeted expenditures in the general.
Second? Discussion?
Any questions on it? They're all personnel related activities. Most of these are items that you've been aware of. It's cleanup funding for the chief position as well as paying the unused vacation time for the old chief. It's funding the new superintendent of facilities. Doug was in here for that, and then there's a little bit in the VNA as we've had a lot of movement of leadership. So we end up with unused vacation time and some areas like that. We also limit top manager position within the VNA, and town manager approved a modest increase for the mid manager to cover both positions. So it's really moving within the budget just to fund a higher mid manager, which was a net substantial net savings to the town itself. So those are the big pieces.
All in favor?
Aye.
Move to transfer $2,700 from storm-related overtime to Charter Revision Commission secretaries, 2,000, workers' compensation, $47, social security, $153, and supplies accounts, $500 to fund the charter review.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
From a financial standpoint, we continue to be in a good position for the year. Receipts overall across the 100%. I did transfer the balance from the high school project in. So the final shortfall versus the 1.2 million we originally expected was $261,939. But as you can see, we're obviously 100% already. There's 2 more months of money to come in, although I don't expect substantial new money. We did receive this the third and final tranche of ECS from the State Department of Education. We will collect some more back taxes at this point, potentially some additional money in advance of the tax sale that will take place in August, September. Some folks pay earlier to just avoid going into that sale. But other than that, I don't expect dramatic increases in the general fund revenue, and we shouldn't really see that this time of the year. But we are in good shape. We are in good shape from a tax collection standpoint. The pension, again, as a reminder from last month, we had a discussion. The liability sits at where it was during the last valuation, and we are up substantially from the interest rate. Assumed it was 2.16 in the last valuation. We're hanging in around 3% now, so you can reasonably expect it. That's about $300,000 to $400,000 less in liability just from interest rate growth. VHS rooftop ductwork project is completed. We're just waiting on final paperwork. That what remains in there is just retainage. So that project is completed, which is great. Fort Ridge rehab, we are again can close out mobiles. Fort Bridges are completed with just final elements. Lighting upgrades, you can see that there were compared to last month, there were some actual expenditures. So we are working in that area, moving forward there, as well as a little bit of work for classroom storage, cubbies and cover. Continue, I would say, to be in the $2.5 million range. We met today to talk about capital in the areas we want to come back and ask for money. I do intend to come back the first meeting in June for the council and your meeting in June for the first chunk, what we're calling tier 1. These are the main public safety elements. The fire alarm upgrade at Willard, school vans that will actually catch us up to where we should be, at least for most of Sunset, as well as servers for the town hall and the police department area. And then some additional work at Hubbard Playground, just tripping hazards. So those are going to be the first areas we're going to try to go and focus on before we close the year out. And then the last thing I would just comment Last meeting, Gary, you asked for year-over-year revenues. The very last page is an attempt at that, take whatever feedback you guys have, but it went back 3 full years as well as through March. At the time this was published, April revenue was still not closed for the VNA, but it kind of gives you a picture. From my perspective, the area where we see the most dramatic challenge has been November, December, January timeframe. So you go back to FY19, having over $1 million for full year revenue. 20 and 21, we're obviously all familiar with what happened during that period of time and took the hit. This year, we're going to be in a worse position in 22. Really, that's driven in 2 parts. One would be staffing level. We had a lot of turnover at the top, so it's resetting the leadership, but also just turnover in nurses. We don't have nurses that can't provide the service, that can't build the service. The other part is really getting an understanding of the Medicare reimbursement program. For a long time, and this plays into the second part of last one, I don't have metrics right now for the group. For probably the last 3 years, we've had a lot of talk about census. The challenge with the Medicare reimbursement model is it's based on the idea of outcomes, not volume. So it's not the number of visits that they do, and the amount of time and effort they put in, but rather the outcome of the patient. So if you have a patient that's diagnosed after 30 to 60 days, as the patient stays on, we're actually getting reimbursed at a lower rate. So while the census number may appear positive, the revenue numbers and therefore the net income, if you will, for the VNA is not as strong. That really was not, I don't know if that wasn't understood, but certainly I don't think it was communicated in the previous statements.
From the procurement point after the last few years, I think that I think we're working for the VA and no.
That's probably fair. I think Barbara did a great job of digging in and getting a real understanding of that. I think the consultants coming in and having the external perspective really highlighted a lot of these pieces. Aaliyah, who is the new director, is on the same page. We've met a couple of times, and you know, she's dug into the budget, she's dug into the numbers, and really has grasped the fact that we have a serious revenue problem. We keep looking at the costs, and frankly, there's not much we're going to do with costs unless we want to change the staffing model. Change the staffing model, changes the offer. It doesn't mean it can't or shouldn't be done. You know, there is a different model that Westbrook uses, which is very hyper-local. They have 2 full-time nurses, a physical therapist, a full-time physical therapist, and an administrator and a clerical person. They use a lot of per diems, and they really are hyper-focused on Westbrook. So they don't go out of the towns, they're not trying to grow the model, if you will. Their budget is in around $600,000 to $700,000 a year. The VNA budget this year is just number 1.5. Historically, the last 2 to 3 years has been more like 1.7. So we've stripped substantial costs out of it. But I think there's a real understanding that the approach that we've taken, the approach that the VNA had been taking for years and very successful, is not going to work with Medicare. The composition of CCCI, Medicaid, and other low reimbursement insurers, that has to represent a small piece of the book we just can't afford it. And then the other we're looking at is the health aides. Nothing against them personally, but health aides, this is a group that has many times rallied at the state capitol. You've probably seen them on the news, that they want more reimbursement, the pay is exceptional. Well, oftentimes, folks in this profession are paid minimum wage or just above minimum wage. We are paying municipal salaries and municipal benefits. Reimbursement rate from an insurance company on much of the health aid work is below the cost. So any volume you have, I mean, there's no way you can ever have a business model where your variable margin is negative, that volume is anything but bad. You should lose more. So those are the areas of focus. I know as you look at the charter, there will be a question about the shell element, the mandate in the charter, the town have a VNA. There is, I think, they do a great job, but we've looked at these numbers, you can see it here. the approach that's being taken, I'm not sure how we dig out of the several $100,000 loss a year with the current model. It has nothing to do with the people, it's nothing. I think the last leader and the current leader are good visibility, and I think have been much more candid or transparent board. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure that this model is something that if the town's willing to supplement a few $100,000. I mean, it's a great model and a great service to residents. That's a question for the design.
Did anybody ever possibly look at just servicing Berlin versus the rest of the community? I don't believe there's anything in the charter that says we have to service other communities. In fact, I think if people were doing that, using $1 million a year or whatever, they'd be upset that we're subsidizing other communities.
It was told to us many times that there wasn't enough, that in order to get their census up, to get more treatments out, that they had to go out of town.
But was that predicated on keeping the staff the size that they wanted to keep it versus, no, okay, you got 10 people doing it, if we just service Berlin, we do it with 2.
Which is the Westbrook model that I was
I mean,
describing.
that's the issue. I mean,
So let me ask you a question about Westbrook. You said their budget was 600,000. How much revenue do they get?
They are typically at round break.
They break even?
I describe them as sort of a DNA model similar to Timberland, which is they might lose a little in a given year, they might make a little in a given year. There are some years that might be a little bit more of an anomaly, but they do not represent any administrator there takes pride in the fact that they service and are a service to the community. They're not trying to make money, but they're also not trying to cost taxpayers. Their goal is to service those residents who want that service, and do it at break even.
Yeah,
It's a
it would
little
be
bit-
interesting to understand what their services are, because I mean, they could be just, doing like, if you go up to Harvard Hospital, you're admitted there, you get a care manager assigned to you. Their job is getting you these services somewhere. I mean, maybe all Westbrook's doing is providing care manager services to their
They have
citizens.
They have 2 full-time nurses who serve as case managers, and then they hire per diems who do a lot of the hands-on work for folks. They use more per diem health aides. So where that service is offered, it's not a primary focus for them. They have the physical therapist on staff, which is critical. It's a tough business to be in with a municipal model.
We're trying to compete with. Just for my own personal experience, it's just not a service that physical therapy, it's a journey. These towns have been here. It's about Westbrook doesn't have to. Not too far away.
Yale's big presence.
But the administrator there would tell you that she doesn't view herself as competing, she views it as a different model. But it is it's a hyper local model. They service Westbrook. They typically are ranging from 30 to 35 per census. And they will never go above 5, often it's even less than that from outside of town. It's more opportunities. Somebody near, right by the border has a need and we will service that need. But if you have a census 30 or 35 and you have 2, 3 from out of town, you can manage that. When I had a conversation with her, one of her comments was, I don't ever want to be in a position where I have to decline a Westbrook resident in the name of servicing someone from outside of Westbrook. This is what they're paying for, and they should be able to get that service. So it would almost be the equivalent of saying, are you turning away people at Berlin Pack who live in Berlin because somebody from Britain is coming in and wants a service in there? And I think people would have a problem if they said, I wanted to participate in a program, and half of it was in Britain, and 30 people from Berlin couldn't participate because it was already taken up. Nothing against the people of Britain, but you would say, that's our library, and those are our tax dollars. That's the approach they take there. It's a different model.
One more
question on the, when you were talking about the revenues being lower, you mentioned something about that due to turnover and other staffing issues. Does that mean that we will be seeing expenditure positive variances? Significant.
If you look at the your projection, the loss is not as, loss is less than what is in the budget.
Our monthly P and L would show that we finished as much as $100,000 or more better than a net income basis. Now, I am using some of that savings to shift over and cover some of the other items that the superintendent and the police chief costs. So you may not actually see it in the final effort, but in terms of what's really happening there, the net income, or I should say net loss, is smaller than this time last year. But that's a tough way to get right. Basically, we're saving on occupational therapists, physical therapists, as well as the full-time staff. Just don't get on.
I'm surprised Westbrook never came up with one conversation in the past to say, here's a small organization that it's break even kind of. Why didn't we ever kind of?
There was a period of time, it was brought up internally. I don't know why the relationship never existed. I would say that I was the one who initiated the conversation just to understand. I pulled up their financials, went to the town's website, pulled up the financials, looked at their results. So I wanted to understand better, how will you let a third of the size of us, yet you're offering this service? And Westbrook's not that much smaller. It's not like we're in New York, you know, all some small town. So it was to better understand that. Barbara had engaged with the administrator there, and I think really the relationship started, unfortunately, Barbara's left. So Leah's learning a lot, and just new employee, new person. We all have that learning curve, so it's a job, but she's hitting the ground running. I think has the advantage of those conversations already taking place, but that is, I would say it, but that is more of a model that I think is anywhere near sustainable in this environment. They're proving.
My question, back on the facts, obviously, and everyone was going to build a house. But I wonder if they keep service at a certain point, especially with Medicare patients. Because they're running as a business, they're going to keep how much is a cutoff where the balance starts like, well, another class of pay for services or Medicare, doesn't be cut off. And we haven't done that. Just keep going.
Yes, for a period of time, not yet. There is a recognition currently, but I would say go back a year or more. The intent was to keep the census number up, and that's the reason why I don't risk. Oh no, but we're doing more of that and saying we need to be moving towards. I hate, I know a lot of people are critical, but one of the things I think part of healthcare does well from a business standpoint is recognizing the life cycle of a patient as you have to. It's doing the life of the patient, the life cycle. The marginal value of this patient deteriorates over time from a reimbursement perspective. So the effort has to be servicing as much as we may want to do more for them. There is a point where, as you say, you have to cut it off.
There's, again, I'm referring to my personal experience, we have to call Medicare for the state yourself, trying to resolve certain things. Versus,
It's a very different model.
it's very different.
Is
Thank
this,
you.
is
Yes,
this,
that's good.
I can update this every month and
Yes.
include it and
Yes, that's
go from there. Gives you a bit of history.
That'd be great.
And we are still talking about metrics. I don't have the metrics only because census really isn't, given what I've talked about tonight, census really isn't a great indicator of the performance that we're all looking to achieve there. And actually, if the census remains at a level, it has to be through new patients. So you almost have to take census combined with turnover. You need a higher turnover rate if you're going to look at the two.
At one time, they were giving us reports that broke down payer. which was a little bit more helpful too. But,
But prior to
you know,
that,
here, so you know who's reimbursement.
and I think prior to January of 2020, I believe it was, when Medicare switched their reimbursement, that was a good approach. We haven't been as quick to change the approach as we should have. And so we continue to rest on the census number. And that actually is hurting us from the thing. Necessarily helping. It's still on the patient. If you're holding to keep the number up. You're chasing the wrong metric. And that's anybody who's been in business, because that's probably more dangerous than a go measure. You think you're doing something right, and it turns out you're actually hurting yourself, convincing yourself you're doing a better job. Hate to say that.
I have one other question. Do you know where they ended up with the state motor vehicle?
3246.
So they did approve it.
Approve the 3246. The actual grant numbers did come out. We did get the run, and it's less than I had projected by about $80,000. I'm confident we can make that up. If you wanted to adjust, you certainly could adjust the mill rate. The directive from OPM is that communities have until June 15th to make that adjustment. Some towns have chosen to revisit their mill rate and adjust. Some have chosen not to. Obviously, those who haven't could come back and do it. So it's really up to you guys.
For a commitment when you're gonna get the money.
There wasn't, but it's in the budget. So OPM is good at reimbursing when that comes in there. They're good with that.
So it's the 80,000 to 36,000.
It's going to be closer to 520. Yeah. I'm pretty sure.
Motion to adjourn.
So we'll
All in favor?
Aye.
Welcome back, Jim.
It looks so happy.